Let's install some running boards onto the Cybertruck. Here we go. 2 months ago, I picked up these roof racks here from EVBase. I made a little video, put it online. I've got a lot of review, a lot of good feedback. I wanted to kind of test and see for myself how much these held up. And so I can tell you, I've used them quite a bit. One thing I always look for is, do your roof racks belly and dip? You can see here, they don't. So after 2 months of pretty heavy loads inside and out, they've held up really good. I like that so much. I went out, got these running boards, installed them, reached back out to EVBase, and they've again agreed to give me a 20% discount for anyone using Charisma as a discount code to jump on there today. It's really easy, CARISMA, use that to get your running boards for 20% off today. And before you tell me you don't need running boards, give me a second to try to talk you into it. You have somewhere between an $80,000 and $120,000 investment that you need to protect. Those running boards are a place for you to bang off your feet, whether you're getting in from the mud, snow, rain, you name it. Especially with kids like me, they're gonna step into the car and scrape their grimy little feet in the back seats. The running boards will help prevent that. 2, you may not personally need the step to get up into the truck, but other people will, including like your passengers. If you ever have a passenger like an older person or your little kids, they're gonna use this a lot. Before I get into the unboxing, I just wanna say my first impression was it's packaged really well, and man, is this box huge and it's crazy heavy. I take heavy as a big plus, just knowing that it's probably very quality and sturdy, it's gonna last me. This is packaged really well and strapped and banded together, just like the other products I've gotten from EVBase. Each of the long rails come in their own cardboard box, as well as all the hardware individually wrapped in plastic as well. Very similar to the roof racks that are made by EVBase is R, meaning the right side of the car, as if you're driving it. So the passenger side, left, meaning like the driver's side. So these are marked 1, 2, 3, 4. What took me a second to realize is 1, the R1 is the one that's going to be in the rear of the truck. So you're going to start 1 back to the back and work up to the front of the truck with 2, 3, and 4. So I'm a visual person, so I like to lay it out exactly how it's going to go, and so that's it. So you see the 2 with the left pointing ones are going to go to the rear of the truck, and the 2 with the split bolts are going to go on the front of the truck. This base plastic shield of the truck is going to have 6 bolts across the bottom. You're going to get the 10mm bolts. However, you're going to ignore the very farthest one to the back and ignore the very farthest one to the front. You're just taking out the middle 4. Where you're going to tap into these, you're going to find that there's a 10mm you're going to remove from the plastic shroud, but also right next to it there is going to be just an actual, like a female threaded hole that you're going to put one of the other bolts into. So these are basically going to go just like they are right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then once those are fastened, your running board is going to actually kind of lay up on top of these before they're shimmed together with the provided hardware. Speaking of hardware, I always like to lay it out, which I did here. Let's go through with what we have. So the hardware specifically, you have these 8 different little spacers, the wrenches you need, the 10 and 13, these little welded on nut shims, all your washers, lock washers, bolts, and then another set of longer, shorter bolts with washers for those also. Let's talk tools you're going to need. That's kind of the cool part, is EVBase has really supplied everything you need, including these 2 little socket wrenches. You have your 10mm and your 13mm, which you are going to need to pull out. I would almost normally use my my automatic drill, my mechanics wrench, but I'm going to go ahead and give these guys a shot just for you guys so you can see that it can be done. I start by raising my truck suspension up to extract mode to give me more room to work. Here, again, I'm using the supplied wrench to remove all 4 of these bolts. I kind of hold it vertical to get it loose and then horizontal to get it out completely. Now I'm going to go in the exact reverse order putting these brackets on. So these little silver screws you took out, you're not going to reuse these. Instead, you're going to have these little longer black bolts that came with it, and this is what's going to replace the silver bolt that was in there before. Next, you're going to put in the smaller, fatter nut. This is what's going to go into what was already the exposed hole in the bottom of the truck. You didn't have to remove the plastic for. Okay, this next part here is pretty important. So when you remove these little 10mm bolt from these holes, these little silver ones, they're about yay big. You're replacing them with these black ones that are quite a bit longer. Why is that? It's because you have a little cutout, like an indentation where these old silver ones went in. Well, your new mount is going to sit flush with these, so that's what these little spacers that you came with, these 8 spacers came with, are going to fill those void. That way, when you come to put your bracket on, it's going to fill that. If you don't have these, it's going to be pushing on the plastic, and your running boards are going to be really spongy when you step on them. So make sure you put that spacer in. So I'm going to go ahead and start lining the brackets up, putting the bolts in, using that spacer on the underside of the hollow one. Just taking my 10mm wrench and tightening down the one into the hollow first, and then using the 13mm wrench to slide the bolt into the actual aluminum female threaded slot on the truck. Again, I found it was easiest to use my wrench in a vertical position to get it mostly tight after getting it finger tight. Then I would snug it in firmly tight with it in that horizontal position where I had a little bit more leverage. This was a total of 8 bolts, 2 to each bracket, 4 that were 10 millimeter and 4 that were the 13 millimeter. Now that I've got all 4 of the brackets on, let's give them a little bit of weight test here. And it looks like they're holding up pretty well. Let me just show you one thing that I just noticed to make you aware of if you install your own. So on these racks, you can see they're ovular, and you need to make sure that these are square to the truck, because it does give you room where you can be a little bit off one way or the other. So you can see this one is straight out from the truck, and not straight. And again, we're square here. So I can tell on this one here, I've got to slide this one this way. So I went ahead and backed these bolts back out, knocked it over a little bit with my fist, and then of course retighten them. Next, we're going to be using these little shim pieces here. I'll show you up close here, and I'm using a left hand to demonstrate. These little shims are going to hook inside the track, like so. And then these little brackets are going to come on the outside over top of those 2 bolts, just like that. For a closer look, you're going to take the shim. It's going to slide inside of these. As it's pulled off, this is going to slip onto your bracket from the outside, like so. Then here's where you're going to put your washers and nuts, which starts to make sense as I set it in place. When you get this settled, you are going to have some flexibility as far as in and out, but also front and back. What I'd recommend is pushing it as far back. So if you look at this from the outside, you're never going to step in the front of the car here because you're going to be getting in towards the back of the door, right? So I would rather have this far back to make it easier for my passengers to get in the back seat, keeping in mind they're probably going to be more likely to be smaller, like children, in my back. So I'm going to slide it all the way back, but I also want it as far away from the car because I want as more step as possible. And I also want to make sure I don't have snow build up between here and here. Again, me being in Colorado, snow is something that I'm always worried about. Now I'm ready to install this little spacer here. 2 little tips. So there's a little channel on the running board you want to get it into. If you're not careful, you'll get on top of that channel, it won't work. So the first is, I like to barely put it just above this. Before I spin it 90 degrees, it kind of sets there, as you can maybe see there. I lift the board up and slide it over just a little bit. It makes it a little bit easier for it to fall into the gaps. Like so. Also, I found by experience, it's a little bit easier to go ahead and put all 4 of these little spacers in first before you start bolting them down. That way you can lift the board a little bit to give you a little bit of play. So from here, I just go one by one, sliding the 2nd, the 3rd, and then the 4th little shims into place. After that, I go ahead and snug both nuts down on each bracket for a total of 8 in all. And I do get these pretty tight because, again, it's a metal bolt. It's going into a metal board. So go ahead and get it snug, muscled out, because you don't want these to come loose on you. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the driver's side, starting with removing these 4 center 10 millimeter bolts. And again, this is sped up since you've already seen this process once. And then it's just a matter of repeating exactly what you did on the passenger side here on the driver's side. Snugging each of these in, again, 8 different bolts, 4 that are 10 millimeter, 4 that are 13 millimeter. And don't forget to put those little spacers in between the plastic and the bracket of the running board. Then you're going to go ahead and put on the last 3 brackets, just like the other side. And of course, putting in 2 bolts into each bracket, the 10 and the 13 millimeter. So you've already seen this before, so let me take just a second to say, please, if you haven't already, like this video right now, hit that thumbs up button, and subscribe to the channel to see what else we have. We've already done the roof racks for you. Here's the running board. Soon to come, an upcoming video, we'll do the front grill guard. It's going to be really cool. Followed by a light bar, a bunch of other things coming this way. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. Next, you can see here, I'm going to set the running board into place. And then just like before, I'm going to go and put all these shims in one by one. Go ahead and lift them up just slightly to get each one. And again, like I mentioned before, I like to get these as far out away from the truck as I can and just center them nicely in between the front wheel well and the rear wheel well. I really love aesthetically how these turned out. They look great, and they're, by the way, very functional.